Welcome to Noob D&D Dad. I'm going to talk about the second group that I'm DMing for as a brand new DM. That is the military veterans group. In these two sessions, this is sessions 3 and 4 of their campaign in the Dragon of Icespire Peak. I made a major mistake with magic items because I didn't know about it yet. I've since learned better, and I learned something that they don't like that I can change as a DM. All right, so on their way from Phandalin, where's it at? Down here. From Phandalin down to the dwarven excavation. See how there's all that grassy open space? So I mentioned this in another video, but I like to have things that the dragon has done come across their path. So because they're going to just warn the dwarves or do whatever, and a lot like Bob Worldbuilder, he tries to tie in the dragon at every possible point. And I think that's awesome advice. So on the way down there, I had a cabin. They see a cabin and the roof's all smashed in and it's all covered in ice. The idea is that it's a destroyed cabin and it's scenery that they can look at on their way to the dwarven excavation. But they get super fixated on it and they want to go explore it. And I'm like, oh, I didn't populate the inside of this cabin. So I very quickly draw in my little notes the cabin, which side of it is crunched and what's inside. So they go in there, the sorcerer casts a bonfire to melt all the ice, and they go in and start digging around in there. They find a simple nightstand with a bedroll on the floor. They roll like the highest investigation rolls. And I had determined that there's really not much in there. So underneath the bed is a longbow and some arrows. And they immediately grab that. And they're a little frustrated that they're really, really high investigation rolls. This isn't just revealing a lot of stuff. But I decide that I have to stick to my guns. And if I decided what's in the room, then that's what's in the room. However, they keep exploring. And I decide to have a cellar door in the back. And they open that and they go down there, and I decided this is kind of like a prepper type cabin. So there's just rows and rows of like food shelves and tons of water skins. So they load up on that. And then I decided to create an improvised weapon, which is basically a homemade grenade. It's like a little leather bag full of gunpowder and a bunch of little metal bits and a fuse. And I'm going fast in this part because I've already told you about this, but now it's in context of where they're going. So the little homemade grenades do 1d4 piercing, 1d4 burning, and have a 5-foot radius. It took me 3 sessions to realize that, and I kept updating them as I was honing the stats of these grenades. But I really like where I settled: 1d4 piercing, 1d4 burning, and 5-foot radius. And like I said before, I'm getting closer and closer to telling you what they finally do with these grenades, and it is so awesome. That'll be in a future video. So they get to the dwarven excavation, and they meet a couple of dwarves at the beginning before they go into the temple, and I painstakingly created this for them. This is a little bit too worn and is very hard to read, but my son's group and my friend, because I'm DMing for 2 different groups, they like to have maps, and they like it when they're a little bit roughed up, because then you get into the role play that this is a ratty old map. And so I used Bob Worldbuilder's technique. I took it a little easier on the soy sauce, so it's a little lighter color than my Axel map, which I've already shown you. But I roughed it up way too much, so it's really hard to read. And I found out that the veterans group, this is a group of military veterans, they do not like to sit and squint at a roughed up map. So typically 2 of them are in person at the table with me, and 2 of them are over Google Meet remotely. And I learned that they do not like that. And that's actually good. So I won't take the time to make these for them. I'll still take the time to make these for my son and my friend and his group that I'm DMing for. But for the veterans group, what happens is we go online and we get the player version of the map. I make sure that it's a sanitized version, and then we have that on display on the screen. So that's what they like. They don't like to squint, and they like to roleplay, but they don't like to roleplay looking at ratty maps. So my bad, and I'm taking that to heart, and I'm not going to do that anymore. But this is the map they had for that session, and I ripped off the secret rooms. So at the end, you can see, like, right, it's hard with one hand, right here. I ripped that off because it has the secret room in there. So one thing I did as a DM for the ochre jelly encounter is I had them come across a skeleton inside the temple that's like an orc skeleton that's just totally cleaned off, as like a little hint that something, you know, like the ochre jelly just like oozed off all the flesh. And I totally got that idea from Bob World Builder, so thanks, Bob. I really, really like it. He's got a lot of great little flavor ideas that I like to copy. So as my group is fighting these ochre jellies, I think it's the paladin runs up and tries to slash it, and it just does nothing. And I'm just like, and now there's two of them, and they're like, oh no, it's immune to slashing. And it's fun to watch them learn. They're like, yeah, it would be immune to slashing. Eventually they burn it, and the way that I have these ochre jellies die when they do finally die is they kind of like pop and like splash and goo everywhere. But this one, they died with like something magical and fire related. So I had it just like explode, and like little burning bits of ochre jelly just go all over the room. So the room's actually a lot lighter now because there's like little tiny flames everywhere. And the gnome rogue, I don't know what his deal is, but he always needs to taste everything. When they killed the mimic, he tasted that, and I had him roll a constitution check, which he rolled very high on. And then again, he picks up this crispy little bit of this ochre jelly and he eats it. And then the whole party's just like staring at him like, what's going to happen? And I'm like, roll for constitution. And he rolls really high again. And I'm like, man, one of these days you're going to pick up some crazy thing and you're going to eat it. And you're going to roll like a 1 on constitution. And you're going to just be like a passed out body for like a straight minute or something. Anyway, so he rolls really high and I'm just like, it tastes really bitter. And he's like, okay, guys, yeah, you don't want to eat this. And I'm like, man, as soon as he rolls low, he's just gonna pass out or just start throwing up uncontrollably. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I'm so excited for when he eats some junk again and rolls low. So another thing I changed as a DM is I made it so that there was 4 dwarven priests, and so there's 4 beds, 4 sets of studded armor, 4 boots. And I think Bob World Builder did this as well. He had the armor actually still be good. And so what I did is I had it like wrapped in like a wet oil cloth. Because when I did wildland firefighting, I had leather boots and I would get them oiled between every single fire I would go on. And so I just figured the dwarves, if they're trying to preserve this like ceremonial cool looking armor, that they would like wrap it in a cloth that's like soaked with oil. Because this is an ancient temple that they're in. So I decided that the players open it up. It's wrapped in oil. They're in nice shape. There's nice dwarven boots, which they all immediately took and put on. They're so excited. It's like their first like extra armor that they don't already have. So the lore of the area is that the 3 priests got greedy and got turned into ochre jellies. But there's a dwarven skeleton that I have crushed underneath some rubble, half sticking out. And he was also one of the priests, but he didn't get transformed into an ochre jelly. So on his person, I have him holding a scroll. And I kind of was thinking of Lord of the Rings on this part, where the dwarves are like, they are coming, and the writing like trails off. So on this scroll that this dwarf has, it says, they have turned. Speaking about his other priests that they've turned into ochre jellies. And then something happened, and then he got crushed before he could make it out, or before he could get turned. But I just wanted that to be like a little hint into the story of what happened, like his buddies got turned into jellies or whatever. So I was really proud of that little scroll that I added. All right, so this isn't yet the part where I screwed up on magic items. This is a part where I invented something and I was very proud of it. So in the secret room that I ripped off the end of the map, there's 2 statues. Well, one of them is destroyed. It's been exploded. And I added a lot more like scarring and like rocks like stuck into the walls, and then the feet of the statue are left so that it clearly has exploded. And then the other statue is holding a green gem, and they all just get, especially the rogue, just starts getting like sparkles in his eyes. He wants that gem. Anyway, they use all manner of thieves tools, and I don't know if they use mage hand, but they did all kinds of stuff. and they basically carefully remove the gem without exploding themselves. And I know the book really wants to just explode these guys, but I decided I would reward the fact that they were so careful and they used so many different means to get that gem that I'm like, okay. And I decided that this gem, and forgive me, this is probably so overpowered, but I just really wanted to see what they would do with it, that it's a magic gem of treasure finding. But I decided it would have one use. So I don't know if they had to attune to it or what, or maybe during this session I didn't know what even that meant. But they find out that it is a magic gem of treasure finding. So they activate it like right away. I'm just like, oh, I totally would have saved this for another place, but sure. So the gem starts glowing and floating down the hall, and it leads them over to a pile of rubble with the dead body sticking out, the dead skeleton, and that they had previously ignored. I was like, dig the skeleton out, it's gonna have something cool on it. Anyway, so it has like some necklace and some change on it or whatever, but I was like, and then the gem stops glowing and just falls to the ground. And so it's still like a cool gem, but it doesn't have that magical property anymore. And I was like, I cannot believe you guys just used that. I mean, they don't know. But yeah, so that removed the burden of the overpowered gem of finding treasure. Removed me as a new DM from having to have that in their possession because they used it right away. So I like to throw things at these guys and see how they react. Now the book has orcs show up when they're leaving that you can fight or deal with or whatever. So as they're leaving the dwarven excavation, these 4 orcs walk in. And again, I have a lot of the orcs be in kind of like aggressive refugee status. So they'll have like a bag over their shoulder, but they'll still be like ready to fight. And they also want to find a new home. So they show up and the party's just like we're leaving here, you know, and the orcs are like, this is our place, get out of here. And the party's like, yeah, sure, there's some dwarves over there. So basically the party leaves the 2 dwarves that are at the excavation to these 4 orcs. And I was just like, you guys aren't gonna like fight them or do anything? And they're basically just like, yeah, sure, you can move in this temple. They just like walk away. I was like, okay. I guess they're all chaotic neutral, except for the paladin. He's chaotic good, I think. Anyway, yeah, so they just they just leave the dwarves to these 4 orcs. So I figure, so as a DM, so it's the players, like cutscene, they move back to Phandalin. But as the DM, I want to play that story out. So I'm not sure what the 4 orcs did to those 2 dwarves. Did they strike a deal and the orcs can live in that temple because they've been displaced by Cryovane the dragon? Or is there a battle and one of the dwarves dies? And you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. But if I have an opportunity to have that come back to them, I think I'll do it. So let me know if you have any suggestions on that. I love, you guys have such awesome suggestions on these what to do in these scenarios. And one thing that this military veterans group does that my son's group doesn't do is they pick up everything, like every weapon a monster drops, they pick it up. Like they're just hauling stuff back because they want to sell it all. And I do know that when they sell it, they should only get half value back. And that's, the bard has a mend spell, and so he's been mending things so they're nicer. I think I might hate the mend spell. It might be too powerful as written because they're using it a lot. Anyway, so they like to just sell stuff, right? They just gather things up and they go to sell it. And this is where I screwed up big time. So I'm just using this rulebook. So now I've graduated myself to using the bigger books as such. But in these early sessions, I was only using this thing. And so when they go to the store, here's all the weapons, right? And there's like daggers and rapiers and various things, right? And so these guys are trying to buy weapons that they're proficient with. And they start asking me, do you guys have a +1 dagger? And I'm just like, sure. And they're like, how much is it? And I just, forgive me, I'm new. I've learned I don't do this anymore. And I'm like, yeah, sure. And I just add like 5 gold, 5 or 10 gold to the price. I've since learned that that is wrong, and I found a little chart of how much magic items are worth. Yeah, so I sold these guys, and I don't even think I knew +1 was magic. Sold a +1 dagger for like 5 or 10 over the price. I sold a +1, I think a +1 short sword or rapier or something. uh, I've since learned, and they will not find stuff like that in stores again. And you know what? Maybe the shopkeep didn't know what he had. Like, he knew they were special, but he didn't quite know how to price them. But guess what? Guess what, players? He learned. he knows. He knows how much magic items are worth now, or he can send you to a proper dealer. So I learned that my players do not like ratty homemade maps that are hard to read, and I learned you shouldn't sell +1 magic items for 5 or 10 gold over their original price. Oopsie. So the next mission, I'm not trying to railroad them too bad, but I really kind of wanted them to go to Butterskull Ranch. And so I had an extra NPC that was like hired by Harbin Wester, hanging out in front of the job board, being like, "Adventurers, come to the job board! This Butterskull Ranch has been overrun by orcs. Like, we need help over there. Like, there's a reward." So I kind of have like a advertising NPC trying to get the player characters to go to there, and I felt good about that. I thought, like, story wise, it worked. Also, I enabled the players to buy horses, which they're just wait to see how they're using them. They're using them. They've got horses and a pony for the little people. So the military veteran group is on their way to Butterskull Ranch, where they had a great good time, and I will tell you about it in another video. And also stay tuned for my son's group finally making it out of Axholm after 6 sessions. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for tolerating my newness as a DM as I do things that are unconscionable, that should not be done as a DM. But I'm learning, and I so appreciate you being here for the journey. And I will see you on the next part of the journey. Thank you so much. If you think this is a good time, share it with other D&D folks. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.